I will be your host for the next 45 minutes, and we'll be talking about speed with trust today, and in our first LinkedIn Live. And I have two guests with me to discuss about this topic, and I am pretty sure that you'll be getting a lot of insights for you to learn or to make decisions into your recruiting processes or hiring operations. Let me introduce the guest to you today. I have Vidyadhar with me, who is the Chief Product Officer at Trustume. He spends a lot of time on thinking about AI, skill verification, improving the entire recruiter workflow. I have Funny, who is a Senior Vice President at EPSoft for talent acquisition. Funny will be giving us the practitioner's perspective into hiring, into recruitment, with the help of his experience in the field. Um, so I hope the conversation will be very insightful for you all. Please feel free to share all the questions, all the doubts in the chat. We'll be taking it after the conversation at the end of this video. Coming to the topic today, so we'll be talking about speed with trust and hiring faster with verified talent. So we know that recruitment processes, hiring processes require a faster fulfillment. And in today's day and age, where are we sort of going there? What we can change, what we can implement to ensure we get the right talent at the right speed with the trust that require. Funny, the first question to you directly. We have seen that um, most of the teams currently hiring, having wanting better outcomes into hiring the right talent, but we have always seen that the process has become heavier with interviews, coordination, and decision making. So from your vantage point, what do you think when it comes to the speed aspect? What is the current challenge to stop that speed and the momentum when it comes to the hiring and hiring operations or recruitment process?
For your question, the speed actually is a very critical part in recruitment, which is always lost not at one place, in multiple steps actually. So what happens is when the initial recruiters will push them and get the detailing and give all the details to the hiring managers. When it comes to the next step is the hiring managers look into their way and they just do some screenings and the multiple interviews happens. But end of the interview or maybe after all the steps, we can see the speed is lost. End of the day, the speed is very important factor because customer wants that resource in certain time. And for some reason, because of not getting a proper validation on the skills or confidence on the candidate, and there are multiple reasons where recruiters lose the time and they still carry with unanswered questions. So the main problem comes in is the turnaround time, which we generally call it in recruitment. And this is what is happening today with all the recruiters, in fact. So when it comes to the other, because every customer gives a different timeline, it could be one say I need it by evening because they need some replacement, because the reason for the hiring could be different for each customer, right? So there is definitely slow down, and sometimes we have to restart the process just because of the candidate's skill assessment and because of not having the right technical screening or not having right interview panel. So there is a lot of factors, but definitely this is actually not getting the right candidate for the right position. So that is a major challenge we have right now.
Right. So, on the same topic, I would like Vidyadhar to put his thoughts specific on where can technology genuinely help teams to improve speed.
Yeah, firstly, thank you so much, Project, for inviting me. It's very glad to speak about AI in hiring and how that's changing the entire hiring landscape today. So, with regards to how technology can help teams improve both speed and strengthen trust at the same time, purely speaking from a product engineering standpoint, Project, technology helps the most when we focus completely on reducing the wasted structural effort, not when we completely only focus on automating the existing noise. So over the last few years, if you see, the market has seen a lot of new software in the market that is built to scale the volume of hiring. So we automated the outreach, we automated the applicant tracking, we even automated keyword parsing. But what really happened was that we just flooded the funnel with unverified data. So while we made it easier to apply, Ironically, that same thing made it much more harder to hire because the noise multiplied. So, if you want technology to improve speed while strengthening trust, you have to shift the focus from volume automation to data integrity. That means you need to move the structured validation all the way to the start of the funnel, to the gateway, which is where you start your talent acquisition funnel. So when you build a platform that executes early validation, then the efficiency of the entire pipeline changes. Because recruiters will stop losing precious hours chasing down ambiguous profiles or second guessing employment timelines. And hiring managers will start seeing a very highly curated and verified group of candidates much more earlier in the cycle. And more importantly, because the trust baseline is established at the very start, even the internal teams can move at a very different velocity when they reach the actual selection and the decision stages. And that should really be the core thesis behind any product project.
Absolutely. And it's good that you brought the trust point here, because speed is one part of it, and the trust is definitely required. And it becomes even more important when we are living in an era where candidate fraud, misrepresented employer histories, proxy interviews are doing a lot of damage to recruitment process. So, could you please also tell us from the product standpoint, how does candidate fraud change the way hiring platforms need to be designed?
Yeah, absolutely, Prajaktam. See, you spoke about a couple of those candidate frauds. You spoke about proxy. Similarly, you have quite a lot of AI-assisted interview cheating that's happening nowadays. And there are many other things, many other different varieties of candidate fraud that's there in the system right now. And that is what requires really a complete uh, change in the traditional system design. Because for decades, the hiring software was built on a foundational assumption of implicit trust. So the design was very simple. We had a candidate who would upload his resume, which is obviously self declared. And then you have the system extracting the text via keyword matching. And then the recruiter reviews it. So it was a very open and passive framework. But with the candidate fraud that is very sophisticated today, from hyperinflated credentials to proxy interviewing to the IT to the AI based interview cheating that's happening, there is a different level of technical screening that is really required, and the old architectural design simply does not work. So platforms can no longer be passive repositories of self declared resumes. So modern infrastructure must be designed as a very active validation engine project. So we need to engineer the workflow to capture much stronger signals around identity, around the employment history, and even the actual skill readiness on day zero. So to be able to do that, it requires very secure validation protocols that are very native into the user experience long before the candidate even gets into an interview. So when you design a platform that really anchors the trust signals at the start of the funnel, then you protect the entire downstream organization as well. So you change the environment from a very defensive posture where hiring managers spend valuable time on trying to catch discrepancies to a more active and empowered posture. So that finally hiring teams can move with real confidence because the uncertainty was resolved even before the profile ever reached their desk.
It's interesting how product and technology can be useful in this, but funny, I would like to know, how does this candidate fraud exactly affect the speed in day-to-day execution or entire hiring process?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. Every day we look into this. So basically, the fraud affects the whole speed, and it is going to affect everyday execution of the hiring process. Basically, what happens is the recruiters start lining up a lot of interviews. They ask their managers and the stakeholders. They take a lot of time, and again, there is a lot of expensive man hours, and also the recruiter man hours is involved. End of the day, if the candidate turns out to be not a right guy to for the fitment, and definitely that is a waste of time, right? So what happens is this fraud, especially nowadays, you can see there's a lot of AI tools being utilized, and they are being used in all better ways to get them in a job. But when it comes to the reality, when they have to really go to the customer and they have to start working, definitely the challenge is started, right? That is where the whole trust we lose from the customer. And this happened actually. If I have to take an example, one of my healthcare customer, they asked us to hire 10 data engineers for a project, and they all liked them. We lined up the resumes, profile looks good, everything. They were talking good, everything looks good. But by the time they started working, we see there is like almost 5 to 6 people, more than 50%, I'm saying, are not exactly what they have shown in the resume, or what they were speaking in the interview. So this is what happens when we talk about fraud, and this is actually going to spoil the relations with the customer and the confidence, especially for the recruiters. They will start doubting each and every candidate, even if the candidate is really good, he has real good experience. But we have seen, when we see a lot of things happening, definitely that is going to affect the right candidate actually. So this is where, when we say, when we have trust on the candidate, trust is not separate. Trust and speed goes hand in hand. In fact, trust will protect speed. So if we have a right candidate, definitely, and feel that he is properly validated, and he has all the required skills, and he has good confidence, definitely that is the candidate we are going to. And if we can know it before, on the top of the funnel, as Vidyadhar mentioned, definitely that is where the confidence will be at a different level of the recruiter and also the customer. So this is how we can actually do more business and give right people to the customers, and that's where the trust comes in again. So it's for recruiters, it is on the both sides, not just one side they have to take care. So
Certainly. Yeah. Now I would like to take this conversation a little back, whether you mentioned about changing the funnel of the hiring initially. And we've seen that it's happening a lot. As Pani also put in there, that people want trusted hiring that is linked with speed. So coming to that exact point, this is a complete change for an organization. So what change do you think a company, when they move from middle of the funnel verification to top of the funnel verification, goes into them, and what kind of operational benefits that they can get from that?
Yeah, that's an important question, project. And then Funny did speak about certain operational aspects of that. I'll speak from a technology standpoint. See, the fundamental shift is that the organization stops processing uncertainty deep into the hiring loop, right? So let's for a minute think about a classic enterprise funnel. A company spends weeks and weeks sourcing, screening, and coordinating 3 to 4 rounds of very intensive technical interviews. Then, only after they find their finalist and extend an offer, do they actually trigger the background verification or background checks. So, if an issue or a major skill gap drops out at day 45 or day 60, then, like Fanny mentioned, the cost of the rework is massive. So you've burned dozens of senior engineering hours in terms of knowledge transfer and the training and so on and so forth. And you have to restart the search from absolute scratch. So when you pull the employment verification, the identity, the confidence, and early skill validation directly to the top of the funnel instead, then you completely clean the pipeline. So the interview stage undergoes a radical optimization because recruiters and engineering leads, they are no longer distributing their time and attention across a wide field of unvetted profiles. Instead, they are concentrating 100% of their energy only on the candidates who have already passed through a rigorous trust baseline. And that is what really moves the needle on time to hire. And Fanny touched upon this topic, and I also want to repeat this. See, true speed is really a byproduct of clean, verified, and fair data. So you're not accelerating the process by just telling your recruiters to work faster, or you're not just telling your engineers to interview over the weekend or do more interviews. What you're doing is you're accelerating the entire pipeline by eliminating the avoidable delays and the false starts before they even happen. So it changes the entire paradigm from interviewing to verify to verifying to interview, right? I'll repeat that. So the whole idea and the mindset of the hiring is going to change from interviewing to verify to verifying to interview. That's where I would leave this project. Back to you.
Well said, Vidyadhar. So, funny, what does this shift that the organization will take, according to you, mean for a recruiter workload or overall hiring manager experience?
Yeah, this is where we are actually addressing the major problem what every candidate is facing nowadays. Recruiter calls 100 times saying that they have to take call, there will be another screening. Basically, what happens, the trust, which they lost because of different experiences with the different candidates, the right candidate will feel more comfortable working in this model. Meaning, when it comes to the recruiters, they have to coordinate on interviews, right? So basically, that is where later they don't know the uncertainty. So hiring managers bank on those shortlisted candidates. So there is a dependency at every level, which is actually how it is going on till now. And if we have a proper funnel, as Vidyadhar mentioned, then there is no change in the process actually. They can just go with the same thing, but the trust actually speaks a lot, rather having the doubt back of mind and taking it to the next level. So nowadays what happens is the recruiter says, okay, this profile may suit, this may thing comes out whenever they say, because they don't want to take any decisions and they don't want to give that confidence to the hiring managers, and hiring managers start looking the candidate in the same manner as the recruiter is giving them the information about the candidate. So, candidate actually, there are two ways, right? Looking at this situation, candidate may be really good or he may be fake guy. So, here the challenge comes in, right? So, whatever with this actually improves the experience of the candidates and hiring managers, and it actually moves really good throughout the funnel with less friction.
Right. We are now coming to the last segment of today's discussion, but definitely not the least, because we are talking about skill verification now. The skill verification and the trust verification, which where I mentioned about employment verification and the background checks, most often has been seen in the industry that is considered two separate things. But I have a question for Vidya there. Um, when it comes to skill verification, why is it important to bring both together instead of treating them as separate steps, according to you?
Yeah, very valid and very important question to address, Project. See, you're right. I mean, right now in the industry, you have the skill verification being done at a different stage of the funnel, and employment verification comes towards the very end, like I talked about the classic employment funnel some 10 minutes ago. So, see, true hiring confidence cannot really exist in a vacuum. It requires a complete and dual lens view of both the history and also the capability. So, especially if you look at the technical and very specialized fields, right? So, if we treat these two signals as isolated signals, then that's a major risk to us. Because a candidate can have an impeccable resume on paper. He can feature exact titles and prestigious corporate logos and years of experience that you're looking for, which definitely satisfies your historical check. But in today's fast moving technology landscape, hiring teams also need immediate and clear clarity that an individual can execute at the required technical level that is required today, using the modern architectures, using clean logic and modern technology languages. So if you verify employment history but ignore the immediate skill validation, then you risk advancing candidates who look great on paper but struggle to deliver in production. On the other side, if you test the skills in an isolated sandbox without validating their real world background, then you expose yourself to identity risks, right? Or proxy risks. So, but if you fuse these two signals together at the very start of the process, then you gain a much more holistic, high fidelity view of the talent. So this unified data point is especially critical in specialized skills like software engineering and niche specialist hiring in IT, where the cost of a bad hire can actually become sometimes exceptionally high. So having both the historical validation and the immediate capability insights side by side, that allows talent teams to walk into technical rounds with more clarity, and it saves weeks of misaligned interview effort, Project.
Right. And when it comes to skill verification, there is a good amount of focus on assessment. And today, that AI, Gen AI, it has emerged as a crucial factor in this assessment. So, how do you think how the industry is approaching skill verification through AI-led assessments or role-based difficulties, anti-cheating measures also?
Oh, absolutely, Project. And this is really where successful hiring platforms really shine. So we need to design our skill verification framework to serve as a practical, high integrity decision tool for leadership. It should not just be any other standard multiple choice tests or multiple MCQs that candidates can look on, and then they can look up on a separate monitor and respond. So a successful platform really is very highly adaptive from an AI driven skill assessments that do not rely on static question banks. Instead, they need to start being more dynamic in terms of building and scaling technical evaluations that are directly mapped to the precise JDs, to the role definitions, to what is required and on the job, and also to different difficulty levels, right? So whether you're looking for a junior level QA engineer or even a more specialized principal AI architect, the system should calibrate the problem solving environment to match what the job actually demands in a real world production setting. And note that one more thing that's important is, see, this is still only the having a great assessment is only half the battle, right? The other half is really guaranteeing that the integrity of the evaluation environment is also up to the mark, and that is where successful platforms shine. So that's where, I mean, you need to build robust multi-layered anti-cheating protocols directly into the platform. So an ideal system, right, that actively monitors behavioral patterns, that constructs logic flow construction, that has the real-time execution parameters, that will really completely mitigate the risk of these proxy testers, or even plagiarism, or even utilizing an external tool side by side, things like that. So when you combine these context aware AI led calibration with the enterprise grade security measures, you get a skill signal that you can actually focus and you can confide in. And that allows talent acquisition teams to validate the genuine execution capability of an individual on day zero, long before even the internal engineering cycles are spent on technical rounds.
Right. So before we go into the Q&A, Funny, I have a question for you. What do you, as a TA leader leading a staffing firm or a consultancy, what is that before and after difference you notice when the company starts doing skill verification and the employment verification or BGP verification together?
I think this is a very important step what every recruiter has to look in. The major problem comes in when you actually do it before. When you do it later, definitely there is a major issue because you will end up wasting a lot of time after you realize that the candidate is not a fit. So that the major factor doing it prior will actually gives, as I mentioned earlier, the recruiter will have a clear idea about what the candidate is all about. It's not the previously we used to have this a traditional method of hiring, seeing their university, their background or something. But actually, there are a lot of people who failed in interviews who came from that backgrounds. It's again the experience I'm actually trying. Assessment, skill assessment, employment verification. If you can really do it in before, you will actually see the top three candidates, and you'll also see their confidence and their interest. Because I'll say something else. So there are a few tools which is present in market right now, where whatever we are talking has an individual meaning. You have to go to the company and get the tool, and you have to go to another company. So there is a lot of gap, which is actually not addressing the problem, which is actually a recruiter facing. So they will have some timeline for doing the assessment and some timeline to do some basically employment verification, which is not going to fit in those recruitment processes because client needs a certain time. A client gives some certain time to to address that requirement, right? So it's not going to help. So if there is everything in one place and the candidate is really interested, and if he's really looking and he's genuinely experienced and having all the skills required skills for the requirement, he will do it right away, and everything falls in one in the same place before even we push it to the customer, which is very important, and that gives a lot of confidence to recruiters. And most importantly, we are not creating any, we are actually reducing the friction to the candidate, and we are making it very clear that this is the serious requirement, because there is a lot of fake requirements also goes in the market just to grab the resumes and all, right? So this is actually a very important factor which is considered by every recruiter, doing it before prior. And once we follow a process, they will also have some confidence either from the candidate. So the most important factor which I see here is the relation between the candidate and recruiter. So this may be what the process which Vidyadhar has referred will be a real fit for the actual trend going on and actual problem which every recruiter is facing.
Right, the actual problem will be solved. So we've come to an end of the discussion. However, we do have some questions from the audience. But thanks so far, both of you, for answering my questions and giving the key insights from your discussions. So we'll move to the Q&A. And the first question, I think, Funny, you can take it. I could summarize. They are asking, when it comes to remote hiring, environment, how can teams build confidence in employment history, actual capability before they invest heavily in interviews?
Right. That's a really great question, actually. Though this is what is going on right now in the market. So, remote hiring started from the COVID time, actually. It was there before, but again, if the resource is known already worked with the customer place, then, they used to get some remote opportunity from the same customer. Now, they need right talent no matter what they are in, which place they are in. So, this is going to be actually, this was helpful for a lot of people who has real good talent and has some challenges to relocate and all in US, right? So, in fact, with the process, when you actually have a right resource and also, the process which we are actually referring to, the trust, if we can really validate the skills and, employment verification and also if and identity verification and everything, even before we even look at the candidate resume or talking to the candidate, that is actual what do you call, this is going to be really helpful for the remote hiring. So this helps actually the right candidate to get into right position, because there are a lot of people, I see there was a supply chain company who don't want people IT team to work from their office because they have all hardware things to be taken care and they don't have an office in their location and they want all the IT team to work remotely. So we were able to have a RK team to help them, ERP team actually, to help them and support their enhancements and everything. In fact, so that's when we tried and we were able to get the resources. But there are challenges. What we have seen is that some candidates, they just, okay, they want a job. Some look at the severity. We have to look at the severe candidate is really in need of a job. That is what, we can see it in prayer. And he has real good skills, and he can actually also do some upskilling. Definitely those candidates will be the ideal candidates for the customer, because it's not the remote activity which we are actually referring to. It's the activity which the client want. Actually, they want them to do it. So this is where this process will help recruiters to do a right hiring when it comes to remote hiring.
Right. And Funny, I have picked up one more question for you, and that's very interesting again. Since we talked about remote hiring, the question now is how important is this model is helpful in full time hiring, where the long term fit and the employer brand matters even more?
That's a very good question. Full-time hiring is most responsible job for a recruiter, in fact, because that is where the client invest a lot of money on the candidate, and they want a right candidate with who can actually fit into culture. So full time is not just the job which they have to work on. It's again they have to go with the flow and accustom with the team, who is already working there, and understand the real problem they have to address in. So it's not, and definitely that's the reason. If you see the full time hiring, they actually have more interviews, meaning they will at least 6 round of interviews. If you see any full time hiring, minimum 5. I have seen with most of the companies, but every step is very much involved. The recruiter is involved and some hiring managers are involved. So this early verification of employment and skill validation, confidence of the candidate, interest on the requirement, and also the most important factor is the culture fit. If we can do it early, we can do it in early stage. That is going to be a cakewalk for the recruiter who is doing full time. because this is exactly what they want when it comes to full-time hiring. And definitely there is a value add for even for the customer, because there is a stats which we actually pull out and give the customer, not just the skills they're actually looking at. It's also about the skills which is relevant to those required skills is also being explained by the recruiter, so it can give a clear understanding to the customer by the recruiter.
Right. Thanks, Fanny. And I'll pick the last question. We have time for one more question, and maybe with other you can pick it up. So the question from the technology standpoint is that the recruitment teams dealing with legacy ATS platforms, how can they implement the top of the funnel verification approach into their existing recruiter workflows without causing much disruption?
That's a very important question, project. And before I address that, I'm very glad to hear that that I'm addressing the right kind of solutions based on what I hear from the talent acquisition operations, the hiring operations front from Funny, because those are the exact KPIs. Like for example, we're talking about the time to hire. Funny spoke about the cost of the fraud or the acquisition cost of applicants. So these are the trust, for example, client trust. These are really the KPIs on which and the reasons for why we have built the solution that I'm currently building and that has already been launched, project. So, but back to the question on ATS quickly. So this is a massive point of friction for enterprise talent acquisition leaders. And honestly, that's where many great HR tools, they are terminated. So recruiters are already fighting fires all through the day, right? So if you hand them a brilliant new verification tool, but tell them that they have to log into an entirely separate dashboard, remember a new password, and copy paste data from one application to the other application, then the adoption slowly drops to zero. So, from a product architecture perspective, I have a golden rule, and that is don't disrupt the workflow, supercharge it. So, we understand that large organizations have very deeply entrenched legacy ATS applications, whether that could be Workday or Talio or CPAL or Greenhouse, or some even have their own custom internal builds. So, the technical transition should not really require a painful months and months long IT overhaul. So instead, the solution that we are building has seamless API first architecture, right? So we design intelligent overlays that live natively right inside the environment that your recruiters are already looking at. So when a recruiter opens a candidate profile in their legacy ATS, then our platform's verified skill signals and the background batches, they appear right there on the screen for them. So they don't need to move from one application to the other application. So our core metric really for the integration success is reducing the tab switching. So by keeping everything in a single unified view, the adoption becomes completely intuitive. So recruiters don't feel like they are learning a new system. They just feel like their existing system suddenly got a whole lot smarter. Right? So we bring the power of early verification directly to the top of their existing funnel. And that means the talent acquisition teams, they get all the benefits of day zero validation, the anti-cheating protocols, and all the anti-fraud mechanisms and features without a single minute of operational downtime or workflow friction. And that is what the application, the platform that I'm building project, it's called Trustume, and that's what we do.
Right. It would be difficult for me to take the other questions that are there, but we will definitely be getting back to you guys with the answers from our experts. So stay tuned. We'll be getting answers to all of those questions. So before we conclude, we have now established with whatever I've heard from you guys that early verification is the key to move forward. And in summary, if the industry needs to move forward and make themselves future proof and add more speed to their recruitment processes, early verification is critical. So I would now like to know from you, Vidyadhar, how Trustume is actually adding value into this and how it is actually addressing that particular challenge.
Yeah. So, like I said, I mean, see, I mentioned this earlier. See, most traditional software suites, they treat verification as a downstream administrative task. And Trustume's entire product architecture was engineered to flip this legacy mindset on its head. So we built Trustume to create a more actionable, secure ecosystem where employment verification and the identity validation happen right at the beginning of the relationship, so that recruiters can no longer live in a state of ambiguity, waiting until an offer is drafted to get a certified look at a candidate's professional trajectory. So, from a product user experience perspective, what we did is we transformed the output into a highly structured, into a recruiter friendly and fully authenticated talent profiles. So when a talent acquisition team or a founder, they open a profile on Trustume, they're not looking at a traditional text document full of unverified claims. They're actually looking at a certified talent asset where the employment history baseline, the primary identity signals have already been securely processed. So when you look at when a recruiter is on the platform, right, what they see is really only verified profiles, fully verified profiles, verified from an employment standpoint. The skill verification is done entirely. I mean, the credential verification is done. So by delivering this level of clarity up front, we ensure that the top of the funnel is not just a massive pool of names, it's not just a massive pool of unverified profiles, but an immediate actionable database of highly verified professionals. So when your top of the funnel data has an absolute integrity guarantee, then the downstream velocity of your business scales exponentially. And that's the guarantee that we are providing as a platform. So that completely removes the guesswork from the point of selection. That is what Trustume is for you, Project.
Right. And I'm pretty sure Vidyadhar would be eager to know from Funny how Trustume is actually adding value. As a user of Trustume Funny, what would you say, and as a subject matter expert in this area?
So this is what every recruiter wants nowadays. So for sure, the on the ground, if you see the recruiters nowadays, what is exactly the problems they're actually facing. Vidyadhar is actually addressing the same. I think the same problem. So I say Trustium would be the ideal platform because for any staffing, for contract, full time, remote, the most important factor is the candidate, verified candidate, getting into a right position and working there. It's actually addressing not only the recruiters, it is also addressing the candidates who are really talented, have genuine experience. So definitely this is going to be a beautiful platform for any recruiter who can use it, because the most important factor comes in. It's not just the employment verification, and we are validating even before talking to the customer or candidate. In fact, validating the candidate to employment, and also if the candidate is already interested to get validated on the employment, that is more better, because a recruiter can actually identify that candidate who is matching to the requirement and directly send the assessments. And I think this is really beautiful, because this is where actually the current market is actually facing the problem. As I mentioned earlier, whatever Vidyadhar mentioned till now is everything in one place, which has timeline, not as coordinating with different areas or different tools to get the information or to validate. That is what is happening in today's market. So for assessment, you have to candidate. If the candidate is not responding, maybe he is not interested. So everything is actually clear and evident, and the recruiter can actually take easy decisions. And he can. So this is where he can actually have the top three, and also it is going to helpful for the candidates who is actually interested in getting a job. So verification to the top of the funnel is the most important factor. I think this is what we call reverse engineering right now. What we look in to the trend which is actually going on. This is going to help most of the recruiters if they can really find a good resource in Trustium. And most importantly, the speed. As I mentioned, trust and speed. Definitely, this is going to increase the speed, and they can have their customers. They can actually have more customers with this business. Definitely, there is a lot of things in line with this process.
Awesome. So kudos to Vidyadhar for creating the product, and I'm definitely eager to learn more from you both on the product and what is happening on the industry. But we'll have to stop today, and this is just a pause. Thanks, audience, for being with us and hearing the conversation. Please feel free to share and follow our page to get more conversations like this. We will be bringing you more deeper analysis into recruitment, hiring processes, and overall the industry insights from key experts in the industry. And we'll be having more sessions like this. But until we meet next time, thanks both of you, Vidyadhar and Fani. Thanks for your time, and thanks for the audience as well.
Thank you, Project. Thank you,
Thank you
Funny.
so
Thank you,
much.
everyone.
Thank you so much, Prajat, for giving this opportunity. And also thank you, Vidyadhar, for giving this insights on Trustium. And definitely this is going to help all the recruiters.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Glad to hear that
Thank you.
from you. Thank you.